Hi everyone, welcome to the TriEssence martial art channel. It's been a while since I last released public videos. I did, however, release a few Patreon exclusive videos, but yeah, for the past 2 months or so, well, it's a combination of Eric and my schedule conflict, and also there were on the days where we were supposed to make videos, so it was raining, and also I had a lot of assignments and exam that I had to write. In fact, I wrote my last final just 2 days ago. So yeah, all of these factors together kind of delayed my video making process. But now that my exams are done, my new semester is starting, I finally get around to make public videos again. So today's video is a response to a question that one of my Patreon supporters has asked me. And his question was basically that, what is the purpose for Taichi to do the form in a very slow manner? And this is basically a follow-up question to the last public video I made regarding why internal martial art don't want to avoid doing weight and muscle specific training. So his question extends from that topic, and he asked the question specifically both for health and combat purpose, right? So both when considering health and combat, why do Taichi favoring doing the form extremely slow? Before I go ahead to answer the question, right, let's first examine the inherent problem within this notion. Obviously, I hope most of you will know by now that Taichi originally is a combat-focused martial art. Its health purpose and practicing as a health art was a much later thing. And whenever we talk about combat, right, a martial art, the first thing everybody thinks about is speed. I mean, when you're fighting somebody, speed is very important. It's not everything, but it's very important. You can't fight someone without speed. So therefore, a very rational question would be why Taichi spends so much time doing a form in an extremely slow manner, and how does that translate into combat? And obviously, in modern day context, a lot of people would look at Taichi and assume it is a health exercise, and therefore wouldn't think too much about why it's going slow. But if you think about its original purpose, which is combat, then it's kind of strange that it's doing its form really slow. Of course, some people out there would argue that Taichi originally wasn't done slow. The slow version of Taichi was invented once it became a health exercise, and that's simply not true, right? In my previous videos, I have mentioned how when Chen Fake of the Chen village came to Beijing, the Beijing Taichi people look at what he did with the Chen style and deemed it too fast to be Taichi. And these are people who have seen a first and second generation of young family where Taichi was still used predominantly as a combat style, and know how their Taichi look like. And by that we can infer that Taichi has always been practiced slow. Right, and if that is true, then then it comes to what we're trying to discuss today, which is why would a combat-based martial arts do its form slow? Now that we have set up the premise, let's explore the two dimensions, which is first health and second combat. So when it comes to health, right, my Patreon supporter, the one that asked me this question, he also specified that there has been some research coming from Harvard, for example, that has recommended Taichi as a health exercise, and and this is a question I get asked quite often, that people would wonder, is Taichi especially good for health? Is there something like mythical about it that makes it better for health than other exercises? And I have to say, despite the fact that I practiced Taichi for many years, and I teach Taichi and all of that, but I have to say, right, honestly speaking, I don't think Taichi is better than other popular health exercises. It may offer something different and unique to other health exercises, but when you consider all the data and research overall, Taichi isn't special. So of course there are many different research out there that have different conclusions. But from the ones that I have seen, right, the one that says Taichi is great for health, the one common issue with those papers is that they are comparing Taichi to people who are doing nothing. So obviously, if you're doing nothing, you're not gonna have as much health benefit as doing something. So that's kind of a low bar. I mean, it does indicate that Tai Chi has health benefit, right? Hence, it's have better benefit than you doing nothing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Tai Chi is better than everything else. Now, I have particularly looked at some research during my study on that. It's about rehabilitation of cancer patients, right? And in that particular study, they looked at Tai Chi, they looked at strength-based resistance training, they looked at yoga, Pilates, a whole range of things, and kind of compare them to see if any particular exercise are better for cancer survivors that's trying to recover from chemotherapy and all the other health issues. And that paper pretty much is a systematic review, right? So it's one of the better evidence out there. And that systematic review basically concluded that Tai Chi and other exercises, none of them have an obviously significant better result when it comes to the well-being of cancer survivors. However, it did point out the one key criteria that predicts a better outcome for cancer survivors doing exercise is the time that they spend on exercise. So in that paper, it basically said that you have to exercise for at least 45 minutes to an hour to have the best result. So if your exercise is relatively short, then you don't get as much benefit from it. So that's the only major finding from that systematic review. And what this would mean is that if you were to do something that is very active and tiring, for example, doing speed running or doing hard weightlifting exercise, then you probably can't continuously exercise for 45 minutes, and therefore it's probably not as good. And obviously, right, if we're talking about cancer survivors, then we have to look at their own body's capability, right? They can't do those heavy or severely active exercises. So in those circumstances, then Tai Chi does definitely have its benefit. So even if you're not as healthy, it's not that hard to engage in Tai Chi exercise for 45 minutes versus say running, jogging, or doing push-up or calisthenic. So there's some inherent benefit in that regard, and that kind of comes back to the original question of why Tai Chi does it slow. So if you're doing something slow, you kind of you're able to actively exercise for a longer period of time, and by actively exercising, I basically mean that it doesn't really count. I say for example, I do 45 seconds of push-up, and then I take 15 seconds break and do another 45 seconds of push-up. That is a great exercise. But when you do things like that, you have to kind of count the active exercise time and discount the break in between, and it's different to a continued non-break exercise for 45 minutes. So in that context, right, if you're doing something slow like Tai Chi or yoga, it is easier to go on for 45 minutes than some of the more extreme exercises. And therefore, we can see this trend that Tai Chi, doing its form slow, has better health benefit for people who whose health condition is below average, right? So if you're like a healthy young person, then doing, not saying that you can't do Tai Chi, but you're probably not gonna get as much health benefit from doing Tai Chi than if run, jogging, wall climbing. There's other things that you can probably get more health benefit out of it. Again, not saying that you shouldn't do Tai Chi if you really want to, but the health benefit will probably pale when your body are more capable. But as you get older, and your body starting to, especially if you don't upkeep your body as well in exercise terms, a lot of these more rigorous exercises you probably can't do as well. Maybe have like a bad knee or a bad elbow or something, and so the less physical condition your body is in, the more appealing trainings like Tai Chi would be, because it has a very low entry bar, right? Like almost anyone can start doing Tai Chi and starting to do some exercise. If you get someone, for example, in their 70s who hasn't done exercise in decades, you get them to start jogging, it's probably not a good idea. They're gonna probably injure their knee because their knee is probably already not in a condition that they can jog. Or any kind of scenario in that similar logic, right? it's easier to start someone who's less physically capable on trainings like Tai Chi. But again, Tai Chi isn't the only training that you can do, like some mild form of yoga or other exercises is also good, even just slow walking around the block. So again, Tai Chi isn't the only option, but it definitely shines for people who are less physically capable. It has a low entry bar for anyone in any condition to start doing Tai Chi. So that I would say is the first health benefit for doing the form slow. That has a low entry bar. The second thing that I think makes Tai Chi great for health while doing its movement and form very slow is that it kind of trains your muscle stamina. So while Tai Chi doesn't build big muscles like weightlifting or push-up or calisthenics, and also it try to tell people to relax and not engage in muscle exercise while doing whether the form or other Tai Chi basic training. But inevitably, right, when you pick up your arm and you move it around, you are going to engage in muscles. And because of how long a form is when you're doing it slow for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, you can't engage in a more stamina-based muscle training, muscle and joint, right? So all your limbs are put under a mild stress over an extended long period of time. And this kind of exercise will give you a different type of benefit than if you're doing weightlifting, which build up strength and explode a more explosive based muscular force. Whereas Tai Chi will give you another type of benefit, right? So when you're doing Tai Chi, for example, a lot of the old people that I've spoken to and I've heard other people spoken to, they basically say that before they did Tai Chi, they have like more body aches here and there. But once they started doing Tai Chi, then these aches kind of goes away. It just means that their body, their muscles and everything are put under a mild stress for a long period of time, and that kind of builds a certain degree of body functionality. And the third thing that I would say that doing Tai Chi slow will benefit the health is in this ability to teach people to control their balance. So when you are walking on a regular pace, right, you don't really think about it. You pick up your leg, you put it down. You pick up your foot, you put it down, and everything is done by the implicit memory, right? It's an automatic part of our brain. We don't really think about it. But the moment you slow everything down, right, like in Tai Chi, you pick up your one foot slowly. You have to balance on one leg, and then gradually step your other foot outside. And for a long period of time, your foot's kind of elevated in the air and you're balancing on one foot, and you gradually put it down and slowly shift your weight to the new step and then pick up your rear foot and move. So when we basically slow down your entire walking process, it basically is starting to train your balance. And as we all should know, right, as people get older, their balance get weaker, which is why older people tend to trip and fall. It has to do with knees, hips, and other bone issues, but also has to do with your general balance. Constantly train your body in doing slow balance stances and stepping, then your balance would be retained for a longer period of time, and it will be less likely for an elderly person to lose their balance and trip and fall. And you might know when an elderly person trip and fall, it's quite detrimental because if they break the hip or they break a bone, a lot of times they actually don't recover and they end up dying from the consequence of breaking something. So elderly people really don't want to fall. And Tai Chi can kind of help an elderly person or a person who eventually ages to an elderly point to retain your balance for a longer lifespan, so that you can basically have less risk of losing your balance and falling. And next, a bit similar to the slowing down the step, you're also basically slowing down your hand movement. And so we're doing something really fast, like walking, right? It's autonomic. We don't really think about it. Or even when you are throwing a punch, because the motion is so fast, you don't really think about every moment that your fist goes out and comes back. So it doesn't have as much cognitive requirement than compared where you have to be aware of your hand from here, for example, turning, rotating your body. So when you're doing something slowing down, you need to have more control, right? If you just throw your arm from here to there, you don't really think about what happened in between, right? The momentum takes you through. But when you're not using momentum, you have to do everything slow. And if you focus on your hands and your movement, then you're actually also training your cognitive functioning a lot more. You actually have to actively engage in your brain's cognition while you are doing this motion. So that, in a sense, will help you to retain your cognitive function, right? Which is also something that elderly people tend to start losing as they reach 60, 70, towards 80. Cognitive function goes down, and also the control of the limb extremities and the fingers also start to deteriorate. So if you are constantly exercising your arm or your whole body, but in this case, having these motions and being fully cognitively aware of how you're doing this motion rather than just following momentum, then it does have some benefit on your overall cognitive functioning and how your brain controls your limbs. And also, Taichi is fairly complicated. I wouldn't say it's very complicated, but from my past teaching experience, there's definitely a fair bit of people who have never got any martial art background. They find the Taichi form to be quite a challenge to remember. Like moving the left hand, the right foot, the left, the right hand, the left foot, stuff like it complicated for them. So in that, and you have to draw different circles. This hand go that way, this hand go the other way, or this hand go this way, that hand do something else. So I've never really had that experience, but I have been told by my students that it can be a challenge for them cognitively, and I believe that's also part of the benefit of doing Taichi, is that especially doing it slow, where your brain have to actually engage in what your hands are doing. So it basically helps them to exercise their brain at the same time that they're exercising their body, right? As opposed to if you're just doing jogging, not much of your cognitive function is being exercised. I'm not saying jogging is bad, right? Jogging is actually a very great exercise. It serves a different purpose to Taichi. For example, jogging will train your lung capacity, blood flow, and all of that, which Taichi is not very great at. But when it comes to cognitive functioning, then Taichi is better at exercising that portion of your health compared to jogging. And lastly, right, I've talked about this in my past video, regarding whether Taichi is a form of psychotherapy. It's basically the health benefit of mindfulness, right? So if you haven't seen that video, do watch that for the full, complete picture. But in short, Taichi only can have, mindfulness training because it is slow. If you're doing something fast, it's very hard to be mindful because, firstly, you have aggravated breathing. Like you'll be tired, your heart rate goes up, you're sweating profusely, and you're basically doing things at a fast pace. And for example, if you're punching a bag, or if you're doing running, jogging, in all of that kind of scenario, because your body is under such heavy physical strain, it's very hard to be mindful, right? Your brain kind of it becomes autopilot, right? It get into the you kind of focus, you almost don't even focus on anything. And that's like the opposite of what in psychology we call a mindfulness-based therapy, right? Where you have to be completely calm and relaxed so that your conscious can be mindful and focused on every single detail that's happening to your body. And as I said, I've already made a video on why that's good for your health. But what I'm trying to say here is just basically draw the the connection that can only be achieved when you're doing things extremely slow. And that's why when you're doing a Taichi form slow, you're able to get into a mindfulness zone, and that zone is basically good both for your physical health and especially good for your mental health. Right? So these are basically factors of why I believe Taichi is good for your health when you're doing the form slow, and these benefits you are not going to be able to get them as well if you end up doing the Taichi form fast. Right, now with that out of the way, next let's look at why would Taichi be doing the form slow for combat purposes.